Welcome to Midnight Grove, where every story blossoms with magic and meaning. Tonight's tale, The Garden of Forgotten Dreams, invites you to step into a world of glowing flowers and second chances. Follow Lila, a young girl who discovers a magical garden where forgotten dreams take root and grow. Join us as she rekindles her belief in herself and learns the power of nurturing her dreams. Relax, settle in, and let the enchantment begin. Chapter 1: The Whisper in the Woods. The town of Willowmere, nestled like a dream between rolling meadows and the edge of an ancient forest. By day, its cobblestone streets bustled with townsfolk tending to their chores, exchanging gossip and humming the melodies of old songs. But at night, the town was wrapped in a hushed stillness, the only sound the faint rustling of leaves in the wind. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to make her sit up. It was soft and melodic, like a whisper carried on the wind. The forest had always been a source of wonder and fear. Its towering trees stretched endlessly into the distance, their gnarled branches twisting like fingers against the sky. People whispered about strange lights and hidden paths, about stories lost to time and secrets waiting to be discovered. For 13-year-old Lila, the forest was more than a backdrop to her quiet life. It was a symbol of the dreams she had once held so tightly and now felt slipping further and further away. A dreamer's doubt. Lila had always been the imaginative one in her family. While her older siblings excelled at practical skills, she had spent her childhood dreaming of adventures and creating things that only she could see. Her room was still cluttered with half-finished projects, a stack of storybooks with loose pages, jars of dried-out paints, and a wooden birdhouse she'd started building months ago but never finished. It wasn't that she didn't try. She'd thrown herself into every new idea with excitement, but something always went wrong. The paints wouldn't mix right, the stories felt flat, and the birdhouse, well, she'd accidentally glued the roof on backward and given up in frustration. "You're too hard on yourself," her brother Jamie said one evening as they sat together in the garden. He was 2 years older and endlessly patient, always ready to fix what she broke or listen when she rambled. "So I'm not hard enough," Lila muttered, hugging her knees to her chest. "And maybe I'm just not good at anything." Jamie frowned. "That's not true." "It feels true." He leaned back against the garden wall, his eyes thoughtful. "Dreams take time, Lila. They're not supposed to be perfect right away. You've just got to keep going." Lila didn't answer. She wanted to believe him, but the weight of her failures felt too heavy. A strange sound. That night, as Lila lay in bed staring at the ceiling, a strange sound broke through the quiet. She pushed her blanket aside and crossed the room to the window. The moon hung low over the town, casting a silver glow over the rooftops. Beyond them, the forest loomed dark and mysterious. The sound came again, and this time, Lila felt a strange pull in her chest, as though the whisper was calling her. "Lila!" Jamie's sleepy voice came from the doorway. He rubbed his eyes and squinted at her. "What are you doing? Do you hear that?" "Hear what?" "The whisper. Jamie yawned and shook his head. "You're imagining things. Go back to bed." But Lila couldn't. The whisper filled her with a sense of urgency she couldn't explain. The path unseen. Lila grabbed her coat and boots. Careful not to wake Jamie, as she crept down the stairs and out into the cool night air. The town was still, the only sound the distant rustling of leaves in the wind. She crossed the meadow that separated the town from the forest, her boots crunching softly against the frost-covered grass. The whisper grew louder, guiding her like an invisible thread. When she reached the edge of the forest, she hesitated. The trees seemed larger and darker than they ever had during the day, their twisted branches forming an almost impenetrable wall. But the whisper called to her again, and she took a deep breath before stepping onto the narrow, overgrown path that seemed to appear beneath her feet. The forest was alive with sounds, the hoot of an owl, the rustle of leaves, the distant crackle of branches. Lila walked carefully, her heart pounding as the path wound deeper and deeper into the trees. The hidden clearing. After what felt like hours, Lila reached a small clearing bathed in faint moonlight. At its center stood an ornate wrought-iron gate, its bars covered in ivy and glimmering faintly as though touched by starlight. Beyond the gate, she saw a garden unlike any she had ever imagined. The garden was alive with light. Flowers of every shape and color glowed softly, their petals shimmering as if lit from within. Some were small and delicate, while others were bold and sprawling, their colors ranging from deep purples to fiery reds to silvery blues. Lila pushed the gate open, her breath catching as she stepped into the garden. The whispering hum she had followed grew louder, filling her chest with warmth and wonder. "What is this place?" she murmured, reaching out to touch a nearby bloom. The flower shimmered beneath her fingers, and an image filled her mind. She was sitting in the kitchen as a child, sketching plans for an elaborate treehouse. She remembered the excitement she'd felt, the way she had imagined every detail. But then the image shifted, showing the crumpled plans abandoned on the floor, forgotten when the project proved too difficult. Lila gasped, pulling her hand away. "Is this my dream?" The keeper of the garden. A soft rustling made her spin around. Standing at the edge of the clearing was an old woman with flowing silver hair and a wooden staff adorned with tiny charms that jingled softly as she moved. "Welcome, Lila," the woman said, her voice low and melodic. "How do you know my name?" Lila asked, her heart pounding. "I know all who come here," the woman replied. "This is the Garden of Forgotten Dreams, where the dreams people leave behind take root and grow." Lila stared at the woman, her chest tight. "You mean these flowers are dreams?" The woman nodded. "Every dream you've ever had, every hope you've ever let go is here. Some thrive, waiting for you to return to them. Others wither, longing to be remembered." Tears filled Lila's eyes as she looked around the garden. She could feel the weight of her abandoned dreams pressing against her, each flower a reminder of something she had given up. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Because your dreams are calling to you," the woman said gently. And it's time for you to decide whether to let them fade or help them bloom again. Chapter 2, Nurturing the Light. Lila stood frozen in the center of the glowing garden, her heart pounding as the keeper's words echoed in her mind. Your dreams are calling to you. It's time to decide whether to let them fade or help them bloom again. All around her the flowers shimmered faintly, their light shifting like embers in the dark. Some stood tall and vibrant, their petals spreading wide, while others sagged under their own weight, their colors dim and their edges frayed. Are all of these mine? Lila whispered, turning slowly. The keeper nodded, her silver hair catching the faint light. Everyone. Each flower is a reflection of a dream you've nurtured, forgotten, or abandoned. They grow as you grow, and they fade when you lose faith in them. Lila's chest tightened. But some of them are dying. That is why you're here, the keeper said gently. Dreams are resilient, but they need care. They need belief. Lila stared at the withering flowers, a wave of guilt washing over her. She thought of all the times she had given up too quickly, all the projects she had abandoned because they didn't come out perfectly on the first try. How do I fix them? She asked, her voice trembling. The keeper extended a hand toward the garden. Show them that they still matter to you. Tend to them with your time, your hope, and your effort. They are waiting for you to believe in them again, reviving the garden. Lila knelt beside one of the withered flowers, its petals crumpled and gray. She reached out hesitantly, brushing her fingers against the fragile bloom. As she did, a memory surged to the surface of her mind. She was 6 years old, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a pile of bright paints and a large, blank canvas before her. Her fingers worked clumsily, smearing bold streaks of color across the canvas. She remembered the joy she'd felt, the sheer freedom of creating something without worrying about mistakes. But then the memory shifted. She saw herself years later, sitting at her desk with a painting that felt lifeless and wrong. Frustrated, she had shoved it into a drawer and told herself she wasn't good enough to be an artist. I thought I didn't have what it takes, she murmured, her voice barely audible. And yet the dream still lives, the keeper said, her voice soft. You only need to nurture it. Lila closed her eyes and let the memory of her younger self fill her heart, the excitement, the wonder, the love of creating. Slowly, she poured that feeling into the flower, her fingers cradling it as though it were the most precious thing in the world. To her amazement, the petals began to brighten. Their gray edges turned silver, then blue, then a vibrant, glowing green. The flower unfurled before her eyes, its light growing stronger with every passing moment. You see, the keeper said, your dreams are not lost. They simply need your faith. The burden of neglect. For hours, Lila wandered through the garden, tending to the flowers that had withered over time. Each one held a memory, a fragment of herself she had forgotten or ignored. There was the tall, red bloom that reminded her of the time she dreamed of building a birdhouse with her father. She had been so excited. But when her measurements were off and the pieces didn't fit, she'd left the project unfinished. "I thought he'd be disappointed in me," she admitted, tears stinging her eyes as she touched the flower. "Your father wanted to spend time with you," the keeper said. "The result didn't matter to him. He saw the joy in your effort." The flower glowed brighter as Lila poured her love for her father into it, the memory transforming from one of failure to one of connection. She found another flower, a soft, blue one, that carried the dream of writing stories about magical lands. She remembered starting dozens of stories, only to abandon them halfway through because she didn't think they were good enough. "I've wasted so much time," she said, her voice breaking. "Time spent dreaming is never wasted," the keeper replied. The heart of the garden. As Lila worked, she noticed that the light of the garden seemed to grow stronger, spreading warmth and color into even the darkest corners. The flowers began to hum softly, their music blending into a melody that wrapped around her like a comforting embrace. But as she moved deeper into the garden, she came upon a section where the flowers were darker and quieter. The air felt heavy, and the ground beneath her feet was dry and cracked. "What happened here?" she asked, her chest tightening. "These are the dreams you've buried the deepest," the keeper said, her voice solemn. "The ones you've convinced yourself you can never achieve." Lila hesitated, fear creeping into her heart. She had spent so long pushing those dreams away that she wasn't sure she could face them now. "You must tend to them," the keeper said, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Even the smallest effort can bring them back to life." Taking a deep breath, Lila stepped into the darkened part of the garden, facing her greatest fear. At the center of the darkened area was a single flower, a large, golden bloom with drooping petals and a faint, flickering light. It was surrounded by brittle, thorny vines that seemed to choke the life from it. Lila knelt beside it, her heart aching. She didn't need the keeper to tell her what this flower represented. It was the dream she had cherished most of all, the one she had abandoned because it felt too big, too impossible. "It's my dream to be an artist," she whispered. The keeper nodded. "You've carried this dream for as long as you can remember, but somewhere along the way you stopped believing in it." Tears streamed down Lila's face as she reached for the flower. The thorns pricked her fingers, drawing tiny beads of blood, but she didn't pull back. She cupped the bloom gently, cradling it in her hands as she let her emotions flow into it. "I want to believe again," she said, her voice breaking. "I want to try." The golden flower began to glow brighter, its petals lifting as the vines loosened their grip. Slowly it unfurled, its light filling the garden with a warm golden radiance, a promise to herself. When Lila stepped back, she saw that the entire garden had transformed. The flowers glowed brightly, their colors vibrant and alive, and the air was filled with a sense of peace and possibility. "You've done well, Lila," the keeper said, her voice filled with pride. "Will the garden stay like this?" Lila asked, wiping her tears. "That depends on you," the keeper replied. "Dreams are not one-time efforts. They require patience, care, and belief. But you've taken the first step, and that is the hardest part." Lila nodded, her chest swelling with hope. She had spent so long doubting herself, but now she felt a spark of something she hadn't felt in years, a belief that she could grow, learn and create, even if it wasn't perfect. As the first rays of sunlight broke through the trees, Lila turned to the keeper. "Thank you for everything." The keeper smiled. "The garden will always be here waiting for you. But remember, the real work begins out there." Lila left the forest with a promise to herself. She would nurture her dreams, one step at a time, and never let them fade again. Thank you for joining us at Midnight Grove for the Garden of Forgotten Dreams. Lila's journey reminds us that no dream is truly lost, and that the smallest spark of hope can reignite even the most forgotten aspirations as you drift into sleep. May this story inspire you to nurture your own dreams and believe in the magic of second chances. Sleep well, and we'll see you soon for another magical tale.